A boy suddenly hears his aunt's cries for help and immediately rushes to assist her. The boy seemed to have drowned, but after the boy woke up, he found himself in a rice field. This place was full of Chinese people. Not long after, the U.S. Embassy brought the boy back to his country. From there, the problem arose because the boy had neither an ID card nor a passport. The only information he had was the word Jacob on his shirt. Perhaps the boy's name was Jacob. At first, the police thought he was kidnapped, but they investigated all over the country and found no coincidences. Because Jacob suddenly appeared, the police officer in charge of this case, Martin, also had a headache. Jacob also did not say anything about his identity. After Martin's persuasion, Jacob wrote the word Arcadia on his phone. Martin immediately understood that Jacob was talking about his hometown. Martin immediately contacted the Arcadia police. The police said that there was no one named Jacob here, and there was no missing child case. Martin was at a dead end again. Martin resolutely called the orphanage and wanted to take Jacob there, but Jacob insisted that he had parents. Martin looked at Jacob's honest face and decided to take Jacob home himself. Only then did Jacob smile with satisfaction. After Martin drove a long distance according to Jacob's instructions, he stopped in front of a family's house. A middle-aged man opened the door. Martin asked the man if this was his missing son, but the man said that his son had died 32 years ago. Martin was very surprised when he heard that. He thought he had come to the wrong place. But Jacob suddenly ran over and hugged the man and called father. Martin stood still, not understanding what was happening. He couldn't believe that the person he brought had been dead for 32 years. At this time, the landlord's wife went out. When she saw Jacob, she was also surprised and scared and stepped back. She muttered her son's name. The man had lived more than half his life, but he didn't dare believe that a person who had been dead for 32 years could come back. Jacob now looked no different from when he drowned. Even his clothes were still the same. Lucy let Jacob into the room so she could observe him carefully. Jacob was still the same as before, and she was old. Looking at the two of them, they were no different from grandmother and grandchild. Jacob's return made her both worried and happy, but Henry was extremely worried because after all, it was unknown whether a dead person would come back to life or not. When Jacob's uncle Fred heard the news, he also came here. He didn't know what was going on, but he scolded Martin. He took out Jacob's death certificate. He thought that Martin was trying to deceive Jacob's parents. Martin was about to explain when Jacob went out to greet his uncle. Fred was extremely shocked to see the boy in front of him, but before he could ask any more questions, Jacob fainted on the ground. Jacob's body convulsed violently. Martin rushed Jacob to the hospital. The doctor examined Jacob with a stethoscope, but she could not hear his heartbeat. The doctor thought the stethoscope was broken, so she tapped it. It was clearly normal. Then the doctor put the stethoscope on Jacob's chest again, and the boy's heartbeat only then appeared. Jacob had to stay in the hospital that evening. When everyone left, he quietly went downstairs. The boy stood in front of the window, coldly looking at the light outside. The next day, he disappeared. Martin and Henry searched for Jacob all over town. Finally, they found him in front of their house, but when he saw his father, he ran away deep into the woods. Henry saw this and chased after Jacob, but Henry was old and he was gradually losing strength. He remembered the time when father and son used to play and chase each other like that, but it had been 32 years since he had been near his son. Jacob ran to the tree hole and stopped to get the toy he had hidden before. Even though 32 years had passed since he had died and come back to life, he was still as innocent and adorable as before. Lucy loved Jacob very much. As long as he came back, she would give up anything. Henry was the opposite. He felt that his son was very strange. It was not normal for a child to have the appetite of an adult, but Lucy deliberately ignored everything. To clarify this, Martin told Jacob to remember when he was alive. Jacob still remembered that he fell into the water because he saved Uncle Fred's wife. The strong river water swept him away, and Uncle Fred's wife was rescued by a man. When Jacob woke up, he was lying in the rice field. Henry was very suspicious of what was going on. That year, he buried his son himself. To investigate the truth, Martin suggested digging up the grave and performing an autopsy. Although Henry was reluctant, this was the only way to verify the truth, so he agreed to let the police dig up his son's grave. When the coffin was opened, Martin was shocked. Jacob's remains were still inside. Even the clothes he was wearing when he was buried were exactly the same as the ones Jacob wore when he returned. Things were getting stranger and stranger. In the eyes of others, Jacob was a monster. Wherever he appeared, people would avoid him. Not only that, Jacob also felt that another resurrected person had appeared in town. This man was the second person to be resurrected. unexpected. 13 years ago, he died of heart disease. On a rainy night, Caleb appeared in his own house. This made his daughter Ellen extremely excited and hugged him. But the son was extremely dissatisfied because this father who suddenly appeared not only ate a lot but was also very mysterious. Caleb's personality became very different from before. He had not been alive for long when he picked up a shovel and started digging holes all over the forest. It was thought that he was digging graves, but in fact he was digging for money. 13 years ago, Caleb and his accomplices robbed a money truck, but while hiding the money, Caleb's heart disease suddenly relapsed, causing him to die on the spot. Now he wants to find that money to help his daughter live a more fulfilling life. Unfortunately, he dug dozens of holes but could not find the money. Caleb was angry and thought that his accomplices had taken the money, so he took the toolbox to his accomplice's house. As soon as the other party opened the door, he saw Caleb and fell to the ground in fear. Caleb did not say much. He used a hammer to kill his accomplices. When he finished, he washed the faux hammer and calmly returned home. He was hatching a terrifying plan. Caleb then did the same thing 13 years ago, robbing a money truck, but it was different now. Before, there were 2 people escorting the money truck, but now there were 3. When Caleb opened the trunk of the money truck, he was surprised to find a policeman inside. He shot the other person and then robbed 2 large bags of money. The police quickly identified the suspect. After a while, Caleb was arrested. At this time, in prison, Ellen was angry with Caleb because her beautiful life was ruined by him. Because of him, the 2 siblings argued constantly. Because of him, she lost her job. Caleb wanted to explain more, but Ellen was angry, so she didn't listen to anything. Then she left angrily. Caleb was extremely sad. He just wanted his daughter to have a better life, but he didn't expect things to turn out like this. Martin was trying to comfort Caleb, but when he turned around to pour water, Caleb mysteriously disappeared. Martin didn't understand what was going on. Could it be that the dead would disappear again? At this time, there was a woman in a red dress sitting in the middle of the church. Pastor Tom carefully walked forward. When he saw the other person's face, he really couldn't believe his eyes. She was his lover who died 10 years ago. The first thing she said scared Tom. She asked Tom if she was dead. Tom looked at his girlfriend Rachel and was extremely panicked. Rachel also couldn't believe that she was dead. She even cut her hand to prove that she was still alive. Tom let her stay in the basement. He bandaged her wound. Now Tom was in a difficult position because he was married and had a happy family. But now his ex-lover suddenly came back to life. Tom really didn't know what to do. After thinking for a while, Tom talked about Rachel coming back to life for his wife. Rachel's appearance made his wife feel threatened. She told him to take Rachel away and that they needed to end their relationship. But Rachel couldn't leave Tom. Her feelings for him were still the same as 10 years ago. That was when they were deeply in love. She couldn't accept that the man she loved had become someone else's husband. Tom and Rachel met at the place where they used to date. She said she didn't want to be separated from him anymore. In the end, Tom couldn't bear to send his lover away, so he arranged for her to stay in a motel. When she entered the motel, Rachel felt dizzy, so Tom immediately took her to the hospital. After the examination, the doctor announced that her health was completely normal. But when he turned the page, the doctor was very surprised. Rachel was pregnant. The pregnancy had been 10 years ago. Unexpectedly, the fetus also died and came back to life. Because Rachel's pregnancy couldn't be hidden, Tom had no choice but to tell his wife everything. The barren wife was very agitated after hearing this. She also wanted to be a mother, but unfortunately, her wish was not fulfilled. Even though Tom swore that he would not abandon her, their relationship had already cracked a bit. His wife angrily told her friend, Helen, about this. In order to get her friend's reason, Helen went to find Rachel. Helen immediately emphasized Rachel's pain. Helen said that Tom would definitely not accept the evil thing in Rachel's belly. Helen even compared Rachel to a poisonous snake in the Garden of Eden, and the baby in her belly was the devil. To Helen, those who were resurrected were all extremely unlucky devils. Rachel was deeply hurt when she heard these words. At the same time, there was also an argument in the church. Some people said that resurrected people were a gift from God. It helped the dead return to their loved ones. Others thought that these people were the reincarnation of the devil. While they were arguing, Rachel appeared before everyone. Tom admitted that Rachel was his lover, but Helen suddenly stood up and publicly announced that Rachel was pregnant. The whole church became chaotic. Everyone stood up and left. Because of that, Tom lost his job as a pastor. He went from being a respected pastor to a man slandered by the world. When he returned home, Tom blamed his wife for telling this secret to outsiders. The relationship between the couple was almost beyond saving. On this side, Rachel was walking home, alone. While she was walking, she was tricked into a car by 2 men. They claimed to be from the Federal Bureau of Investigation. They tricked Rachel to go to find the secret about the resurrected. They saw people coming back from the dead one after another, so they thought there must be a secret hidden behind this. Rachel was confused and didn't understand what was going on. gone. When Rachel was forced by the man to ask, she finally got angry. She threatened that if he killed her, she would definitely follow him like a ghost. He was so scared that he let her go. He was about to ask more when the doorbell rang. Director General Fred appeared in time to untie Rachel, but the man pointed his gun and threatened her, refusing to let go. He was determined to clarify the secret of the resurrected person. While they were struggling, Tom and Martin broke in. The man used Rachel to threaten him. Tom wanted to save her, but he suddenly shot her. Just like that, poor Rachel, who had just been resurrected, was shot dead by the person she loved. Tom hugged Rachel's body and almost fainted. This was a body, to life. At the same time, Jacob, who had just been resurrected, also disappeared. Lucy hurriedly went to look for the boy. She finally found her son in the woods, but behind him was a family of 3. The 3 of them seemed to have just been resurrected, so they felt very strange. The police station was also bewildered when faced with this strange phenomenon. The registrar complained to Fred that these resurrected people were turning the world upside down. Soon after, she received a phone call from her long-dead sister. She immediately ran home. Then the phone rang continuously. The dead were returning. At this time, Martin drove to the police station. On the dark road, a person in a red dress suddenly appeared. He looked closely and was extremely frightened. This was Rachel, who had just been shot dead this morning. Then Martin brought Rachel to her body. Rachel looked at herself lying there and was quite shocked. Even though she had died and then come back to life, the fetus was not affected. It was growing very healthy. Tom, who was standing by, did not know whether to be happy or worried. Tom could not be sure whether the Rachel in front of him was a person or something else. Fred saw his relatives returning one by one, so he hurriedly ran home. Sure enough, his wife, who had died many years ago, had also come back to life. He excitedly hugged her, but she was a little upset. This time she came back to divorce him. Actually, she had come back to life a week ago, but she didn't come back home right away, but stayed at a neighbor's house because she had an affair with him when she was alive. As soon as she came back to life, she went to find a lover. Fred couldn't accept this. He had lived for so long and only now knew that his wife had betrayed him. Fred said he didn't care. As long as his wife came back, he would forgive everything. But his wife couldn't stand her life when she was alive. She insisted on being with her lover. Fred could only let his wife go find happiness. His wife's betrayal made him disappointed in the resurrected. Before, he thought they were gifts from God, but now their purpose in being resurrected was to bring suffering. Now that the number of resurrected people is increasing, the church is about to be full. Fred is frustrated and thinks of a terrible plot. The next day, the army comes to town to supply supplies. Fred deliberately tells the commander about Rachel's death and resurrection. Then Fred takes him to the morgue. The commander is also very surprised. He saw her talking and laughing just now, but now he sees her lying in the morgue. Fred said that resurrected people are not a good thing because they do not come back to reunite with their loved ones, but only bring suffering to others. The commander finds Fred's words reasonable. This is extremely unusual. The two look at each other and nod, thinking of a new plot. They have to protect the living, not these resurrected people. Then Fred uses the excuse of paperwork to gather all the resurrected people in the gym. On the way there, Jacob met Martin. Martin saw that there were so many people lining up, so he told Henry to take Jacob home first. Martin would do the paperwork for Jacob. So Henry and his wife took Jacob home. Martin seemed to understand something. Martin went into the gym to take the family of 3 away, but the soldiers with guns refused to let them go out. It was just paperwork, but soldiers with weapons were needed. Martin felt something was wrong. Were they going to kill all the resurrected people? So he opened the back door and let everyone go. Fred saw that the incident had been exposed, so he was angry and ordered his subordinates to chase them. But among the resurrected people were also relatives of Fred's subordinates, so he chose to quit his job instead of chasing them. At the same time, there were policemen watching outside Jacob's house. Martin rushed over to take Jacob away. Sure enough, as soon as Martin took Jacob away, Fred immediately brought someone. Martin drove very fast on the road. Just as Martin and Jacob were about to leave town, a large number of dead insects appeared ahead. Then a helicopter appeared. There were also 2 black cars behind. Then Martin fainted. When he woke up, the person had disappeared. Jacob was nowhere to be seen either. He tried to remember everything. Before he fainted, he had a fight with those people, and he couldn't remember clearly. Martin was scared and rushed back to Jacob's house. He panicked and knocked on the door, knelt down and begged for forgiveness. At this moment, a voice rang out from behind Martin. It was Jacob's voice calling him. Jacob had returned home. It turned out that Jacob had been home for a week. When Martin calmed down, he remembered that he was taken to the interrogation room by a mysterious person. They also injected him with some kind of drug. After that, he couldn't remember clearly. When Martin woke up, a week had passed. When he returned, he always felt chest pain, so he went to see a doctor. But when he checked everything, he was still healthy. Even so, Martin was still scared, so he decided to leave leave town to take refuge. But when Martin returned to the familiar city, he was still being followed by a mysterious person. Martin clearly remembered that the person following him was the woman who had kidnapped him back then. He hurriedly went home to pack up and prepare to run away. He realized that he could not stay here for long. Unexpectedly, the mysterious person was lying in wait in his house. She calmly asked him to return to town to monitor the behavior of the resurrected person. Then he had to report everything to her. Martin was extremely angry when he saw the other party's arrogant appearance. He said that she had kidnapped him and injected drugs into his body, so he would not believe her and work for her. The woman did not get angry when she heard that. She walked a few steps and warned him that if he did not cooperate, he would be treated like a resurrected person. At this moment, he remembered what had happened. It turned out that on the day he was imprisoned, he took the opportunity to get his gun back. During the struggle, the gun accidentally went off and hit him in the heart. Martin was just a resurrected person at this time. The real Martin was shot and died. This was also the reason why he always felt chest pain. As more and more resurrected people came back, Jacob's grandmother also came back from the dead. Both grandmother and grandson were resurrected people, so they had a connection with each other. The next day, Henry was very surprised to see his mother standing in front of him. Moreover, Henry was older than his mother. The mother and son, who had not seen each other for more than 30 years, hugged each other emotionally. Then he told his brother about what he had done to his mother. When she heard this, she felt angry. Fred's wife was a resurrected person. So was his grandson. Now there was Fred's mother too. His whole family had all been resurrected. So he could not destroy the resurrected people, because having and then losing is the most painful thing. Actually, Fred was also very confused. He drank to forget all his sadness. Although his previous plan had failed, his intention to destroy the resurrected person made him feel guilty. When he saw his mother, who had died for many years, suddenly appear before him, he could not hide his joy. Then he hugged his mother and burst into tears. The next day, Fred poured out all the wine. He had to look at the resurrected person again. At the same time, Martin returned to town. His purpose was to monitor all the resurrected people here. A town in America suddenly had many resurrected people. They had died for many years and now came back to life and returned. Jacob returned from the dead. Then his grandmother also came back to life. She seemed to be hiding something. In the middle of the night, she ran to her family's abandoned factory. She took an iron rod and chiseled into the ground. She used all her strength to finally chisel the foundation. A moment later, a hole appeared under the foundation. There was no money underneath, but a pile of bones. The next day, Pastor Tom took his followers to the river for baptism. One of them suddenly found a skull. She screamed in fear and even dislocated her leg. The police quickly arrived. They searched the river for half a day and recovered 6 skeletons. It seemed that a murderer had dumped the bodies here. What was even more strange was that after the doctor's examination, the 6 skeletons belonged to 3 people. This absurd result proved that these were the skeletons of reanimated people. That's why identical skeletons appeared. According to the level of decomposition of the bodies, these people had been dead for decades. It seemed that Jacob was not the first reanimated person. Reanimated people had appeared in the town decades ago. This discovery scared police officer Cast into a sweat. He had just barely gotten home from work when he accidentally kicked over his brother's wine bottles. Cast's brother only knew how to stay at home all day long. Other than drinking, he only knew how to bully Cast. Whenever Cast had an attitude, he would be scolded by his brother. His brother even brought up the past to mock Cast. It seemed like he knew Cast's weakness, so he was so arrogant. Cast could only endure it silently. No matter how much his brother scolded and cursed him, he endured it. His brother even forced him to eat food from the ground. Cast obediently followed. However, people cannot endure such unreasonable torture forever, so Cast used a gun to shoot his brother to death. Now, Cast could eat his meal in peace. After that, he dragged his brother's body down to the basement. There was a deep and big hole. Cast tried his best to bury his brother's body. When he finished covering the ground, he heard his brother scolding upstairs. Cast's brother had come back to life. Cast was in pain and could only continue to endure it. It seemed that this was not the first time he had killed someone to bury a corpse. Suddenly, the remains of the resurrected appeared in town. Fred investigated for a long time but found no clues. He only accidentally discovered the remains buried in the basement of his family's abandoned factory. He had no choice but to ask his mother, but she refused to answer Fred's question. She deliberately avoided it. Actually, this time, her resurrected body really had a secret. Many years ago, when she was young, demons suddenly appeared in town. Those demons were the resurrected bodies. The living were very afraid of the resurrected bodies, so they thought of every way to destroy them. But even if the living used guns or fire to burn the resurrected bodies, they could still come back. In the end, people found a way to make the resurrected bodies disappear completely. Fred's mother knew this secret, and she swore to protect her loved ones. ones. Although her life after being resurrected was very fulfilling, there was one person who made her extremely upset. That was Fred's ex-wife named Barbara. When she was alive, Barbara met a neighbor by the river. Barbara unfortunately fell in. Jacob wanted to save Barbara to the shore, but he slipped and was swept away by the river. Because of this, she hated Barbara. In addition, after Barbara was resurrected, she asked for a divorce from Fred. This time, the conflict between the two became even more intense. Even at the family party, Barbara was humiliated and left angrily. After that, she began to reflect on herself. She thought that she was wrong and could not be wrong anymore. Finally, Barbara knocked on Fred's door and the two made up. When Fred's mother found out, she was also very angry, so when it was dark she asked Barbara to go to the park. After a while of hypnosis, Barbara disappeared. This scene was seen by a girl. The girl quickly told Maggie about this. At first Maggie did not believe that her grandmother had such an ability. When Maggie took Barbara's blood sample, she was very surprised. The blood vial had dried up. This showed that she had disappeared. At the same time, the resurrected people began to get sick. The first symptom was a constant cough. Then their bodies turned purple and they would eventually disappear. Cast's brother also got sick. Seeing his brother being tortured by pain, Cast couldn't help but feel happy. He had been tortured so badly by his brother before. Now he could also escape this torture. Cast's brother's coughing became more and more intense. He kept calling Cast's name, but then it suddenly became silent inside. Cast carefully went up to check. There was no one on the sofa. Cast's brother had indeed disappeared. On this side, Rachel was going to the hospital for a pregnancy checkup. After being resurrected, the fetus in her womb had also begun to develop. It was even developing faster than a normal fetus. Could it be that the child was about to be born? Tom took Rachel to his house to stay so she could get better care. At first, Tom's wife was extremely jealous, but when she saw the ultrasound image of the fetus, her attitude changed. She took the initiative to keep Rachel and even took care of Rachel herself. Tom saw that they were getting along so well and was finally relieved. But the next day, Rachel fainted in bed. Tom rushed her to the hospital. Unfortunately, she was infected. Seeing Rachel getting weaker, Tom's wife was even more worried than he was. But she was only worried about the baby in Rachel's belly because Tom's wife couldn't give birth. She had long considered the baby as her own. That's why she took care of Rachel like that. But the number of times Rachel fainted increased. When she was about to collapse, Martin brought a special medicine, but it only delayed the disappearance of the disease and didn't cure it. When they were about to give Rachel the injection, she sat up healthily. Everyone was very happy. This woman brought them many surprises. Maggie guessed that Rachel was cured because the fetus in her womb produced antibodies. To study further, Maggie withdrew Rachel's amniotic fluid. Rachel had no opinion because she also wanted to contribute to saving more people. But Tom's wife did not accept. She was afraid of harming the fetus. She even blamed Tom for not protecting Rachel. Tom's wife wanted to protect Rachel and fulfill her dream of becoming a mother. She secretly hid Rachel even though Tom did not agree. When Tom discovered that there was no one in the house, he discovered his wife's plan. At the same time, Cast and the others plotted to destroy the resurrected people. These people even began to threaten them. To protect these people, Martin set up a shelter in the church for them. When Tom heard this news, he immediately ran over. At this moment, Tom should have worked with Martin to save the resurrected people. But at this moment, Rachel called and said that she was being held captive by his wife. Tom realized that something was wrong, so he decided to take Rachel back first, but there was no time. Cast and everyone attacked. They released toxic smoke inside to kill people. Martin quickly directed everyone to run outside. The church was in chaos. People were coughing and choking in the smoke and then ran out in panic. Tom was the last one to run out. He hadn't even had time to breathe when he was suddenly hit by a car. Cast was in a panic in the car. He had only intended to kill the resurrected people, but he had unexpectedly hit and killed a living person. Poor Tom hadn't even seen his child yet before he died so unjustly. Tom's wife was about to go crazy. When she knew that her husband had been stabbed to death, she tried to calm down and brought Rachel a glass of water with medicine. She couldn't wait any longer. She was about to knock Rachel out to get the baby out early. Luckily, Rachel had also guessed Tom's wife's intention. Rachel said the tea was a bit bitter, so she added some sugar to make it taste better. Tom's wife thought it was true and stood up to get some sugar, but then Rachel hit her on the head with the teapot. At the same time, the townspeople were holding a memorial service for Tom. The church was crowded with people. The Anti-Resurrectionist Association used this as an excuse to say that Tom died while protecting the resurrected person. Henry got angry and went up to argue. He couldn't argue, so he fought with them. Jacob felt very guilty when he saw his father being beaten. If he wasn't a resurrected person, his father wouldn't have been so agitated. Jacob thought that his appearance had brought so much trouble to the family. Jacob told his grandmother about his sadness. She immediately led him away. When Lucy looked up, Jacob had disappeared. She was very worried. If her son disappeared again, she wouldn't want to live anymore. At night, it rained heavily with thunder and lightning. Henry and Fred searched everywhere but could not find Jacob. When it was light, people found Jacob and his grandmother in a warehouse in the suburbs. Luckily, Jacob was fine. Fred and Henry looked at their mother with strange eyes. Fred could not forget that she was the one who made his wife disappear. Henry was worried that his son would also disappear, but Jacob's grandmother said that she was not a heartless monster, so she would definitely not harm her grandson. But there was no more room for her in the house, so she decided to temporarily live at the Reanimated Person Management Center. When Jacob returned home, Lucy hugged him and cried silently. Jacob admitted that at first he intended to leave, but when he met his mother again, that intention completely disappeared. At this time, a mysterious person appeared in town. On the deserted land, a man was praying. A lightning struck his back. Not only was he fine, he went to a bar. It was just that the wound on his back had the shape of a tree. The next day, Martin found him on the street. He claimed to be a missionary with the ability to bring the dead back to life. An old woman came forward and begged him to revive her deceased husband. He just told the old woman to put her hand on the Bible. Then he confirmed her intention. She turned around and saw her deceased husband. Everyone saw this miracle and applauded. But for Martin, this was just a scam. Martin followed his family into the bar. Martin warned him not to scam others again. But when Martin returned to the office, something strange happened. Henry suddenly appeared there and thanked him for taking Jacob home. When Martin turned around, Henry had disappeared. Martin felt that this was extremely strange. At this time, Fred entered and realized that Henry might have had an accident. Sure enough, his heart disease relapsed. He died in the car in front of the police station. When Fred opened the car door, Henry was no longer breathing. This missionary could revive the dead. At first, Martin didn't believe it, but Henry unfortunately passed away, so Lucy couldn't accept it. So she decided to go to that missionary. He didn't care about what happened before, but to revive Henry, there was one condition, which was to find Martin here. He wanted Martin to witness his ability with his own eyes. Martin didn't like the missionary, so he didn't want to see this person's trick. At Lucy's request, Martin finally agreed. The next day, the missionary took Martin and Fred to an empty lot. He ordered Martin to shoot him dead. Only when he died could he go to the other world to bring Henry back. After hearing this, Martin felt that this person had a problem, so he was about to leave, but Fred fired his gun. For his brother, Fred was willing to kill. According to the missionary, he would bring Henry back in an hour. Unfortunately, Fred and Martin drove around all night and found no one. Just when they were about to give up, the missionary knocked on the door. He had indeed brought Henry back. Martin was shocked to see what was happening. This time, he was forced to believe that the missionary really had the ability to revive the dead. From then on, he suddenly became a god. At this time, something unexpected happened in town. All the revived people went in one direction. The person in charge of the management center also stood and watched them. Their faces were completely unconscious. The direction they were looking was where Rachel was. At this moment, the fetus in her belly seemed to feel something kicking continuously. She lifted the curtain and looked, only to be frightened by the revived person downstairs. It wasn't until Fred fired a warning shot that the crowd came to their senses. Martin felt that the situation was extremely strange, so he immediately invited the missionary. He realized at a glance that there was something wrong with the fetus in Rachel's belly. He believed that the fetus was controlling the revived person. Once the child was born, it would be a reincarnated devil, so the urgent thing now was to kill the child. So the missionary went to Jacob's grandmother. Only she had a special way to make the revived person disappear. In order to make the plan go smoothly, the missionary gave poison to the revived person. When someone discovered this, there were only corpses left in the room. In the deep forest, the missionary hid a group of revived police. Their sole purpose was to kill the baby in Rachel's belly. Martin realized that the situation was getting more and more serious, so he immediately contacted Fred. Then they took Rachel to Henry's house for refuge. Jacob's grandmother and the missionary led a group of resurrected people to surround the house, but only Martin and Fred were able to fight in the house. The missionary demanded that they hand over Rachel. Henry negotiated to keep the baby, but these people were extremely aggressive and rushed straight in to arrest everyone. The missionary went upstairs and used the method Jacob's grandmother passed down to Grode, hypnotize Rachel, causing her to disappear. She gradually lost consciousness. Fortunately, Martin rushed in and shot the missionary. The hypnosis process was interrupted. Not long after, the child was born. Resurrected people appeared all over the world. A year later, the United States established the Resurrected People Management Bureau. Martin was the first director of the bureau, and the missionary was imprisoned. He warned Martin that the return of the dead meant the end of the world was coming, but Martin did not care. Under Martin's management, the resurrected people soon integrated into normal life. Here, Rachel and her son lived a happy life. It's just that there are always insects outside the child's room. It seems like it's a bad omen. Today's movie ends here. See you again in the next videos.